I did this talk title a while ago, Audacious Living, and as people who try to work with me get frustrated because I don't have talk titles in advance, because I did this talk title in advance, and then after a while I had this shift this month, and I thought, I don't really like that word audacious. And the reason, there's a lot of good, the word, by the way, means bold, daring, fearless, which are all very wonderful things. But what happens when we say audacious living, what I think it can trigger in us is an egoic response. I want to be bold, I want to be daring, and it becomes all about me and showing up. And it's almost like to be audacious for the sake of audaciousness, like to be bold for the sake of being bold. And yet, so I was looking up audacious living. I like to Google the talk titles just to see what comes up. And it was hilarious because everything on the first two, the list that they have was 3 steps on how to live an audacious life, 5 steps on how to live an audacious life. And I'm like, I don't think most audacious people follow steps. I think they just do it. They're not like, okay, here are the rules of how to be audacious. So it was an interesting thing. But I also think there's words that are beginning, that I have used that I'm beginning to question in my growth. And I think the reason why is because they appeal to our ego, and it's just to be aware of what part of these words attract us. So what's interesting about Prince and being audacious living and people being drawn to that, so here he was in the 80s and way ahead of his time, crossing gender lines, going back and forth between male and female. At one point saying in one of the lyrics in the song, I want to be your mother, I want to be your sister. I mean, this was just way ahead of his time. Makeup, high heels. He was crossing these lines. He had women in his band. He crossed racial lines, black and white. They said he just really confused radio executives because they couldn't place his music. What is this music and where does it belong? He just didn't fit anywhere. So he had all this and sexuality everywhere. Just loved singing about sexuality and loved God, but it didn't keep him from being very audacious in his sexual expression. But here's what I find interesting, is that as free as he was, as audacious and bold and fearless as he was, there must have been something missing. For me, I'm guessing, I don't know him at all, but in 2003 he became baptized in Jehovah's Witness, which is a very constrictive teaching, which has a lot of rules, which has a lot of sets of right and wrong, good and bad. So he then went to not swearing in any of his lyrics. I was reading something that he said in 2008, I'm celibate now and feeling pretty sexy being celibate. That his life changed dramatically into something that we wouldn't call bold and audacious in the traditional world. And I think that's where I start going with a lot of these words. Like even, we'll talk about Mother Teresa next month in the Divine Mother, but there's letters that she wrote. And in those letters, it reveals that she was depressed a lot. She actually wasn't walking around in joy all the time. That I think what happens is that we get these words and we hold on. There was somebody who actually said this. We get an idea of who somebody is and we hold on to that, but it's almost not real. Like we're holding on to an illusion. Like I'm bold and I'm audacious, but I'm also scared. Like to me, if we start valuing only one aspect, we can devalue the other aspect. So, in fact, there was one musician, and I don't know who it was because I caught it in mid-report on the radio. He was saying he had an opportunity to meet Prince, and he didn't want to meet him. He said he was my music god, and I didn't want him to be a human being. And I was so afraid that if I met him, he was just going to be a regular old human being, or I was going to see all his faults, and I didn't want to. I really loved having him be this person to me. And I think that's what sometimes when we say these big words, I was thinking about audacious is like a big word. And I was listening to someone give a talk and they were talking about being great and being geniuses. And I thought, well, but Jesus was saying the meek shall inherit the earth, not greatness and not genius. And who says who's great? And that's a human relative term. And so we get into these words and I think that have opposites. And then we start getting in this dance. And I think usually the dance is an egoic dance that we get into. So for me, I was just being with all of this, and yet there's something wonderful about this idea of being bold, fearless, and daring. And I think that means, for me, how I'm interpreting it for myself, is the willingness to be fully who I am. Because if I'm trying to be audacious by an external idea of what audacious means, like everyone's going to think I'm audacious now if I do this big thing, then it's an external thing that really isn't me, isn't something that I've embodied. I'm doing it to get a reaction. I'm doing it to get some feedback, but it's not authentically who I am. Like we talk about, each of us have our own thumbprint. Each of us have our own soul print. We do not have to try to be unique. We are effortlessly and naturally unique. I don't have to differentiate myself from Jeff. I'm just naturally different than him. I'm naturally different from everyone here, and we're all different from one another. We don't have to try to be that. So what we need to do is say, can I be boldly and daring and fearlessly myself? And do I know who that is? So last week we were talking about the mystery. Like, we cannot plan the future. We think we can plan the future, but then God happens. You know, the infinite love intelligence of the universe that is never limited by past precedent. It is never limited by our own habit patterns or the habit patterns of the world in which we are living. And so things happen that we can't plan. And things do happen. You know, Jack mentioned Prince is only 2 years younger and he passed away. And I was saying that last week. I could die this afternoon. I can't plan that. You know, I almost got hit by a car the few weeks ago, and I could have, in that moment, just my life ended. We can't plan what's going to happen this afternoon or tomorrow. And in the same way, we can't hold on to and concretize ourselves. We are a mystery too. If we are made in the image and likeness of the divine love intelligence of the universe, and there are some things we can know about it, but there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot that's beyond human conception, beyond all these human ideas that we have about it. The same is true about ourselves. We can have ideas about ourselves. We can have a Myers-Briggs give a sense of who we are, or through therapy a sense of who we are, or through the Enneagram a sense of who we are. But ultimately, who we are is beyond our habit patterns. It's beyond our genetic coding. It's beyond our environment. It's beyond something that we can ever hold on to and latch onto. So when I say we are here to be our authentic self, and then we say, but my authentic self is the oneness and union in God, and that's an infinite mystery, then who I am is something that's constantly exploring and becoming of itself, but it's not a solid thing. It's not a static thing and saying, this is who I am. Because the moment I do that, I stop my growth. So I think Prince did something interesting when he was young, when he was being himself, and probably when you're little, you don't always know that you're different than everyone else. He's just being himself. And then he got beat up on. He went home and he didn't watch TV. He didn't numb out. He found a vehicle through which he could express himself. And I was thinking about this being bold, daring, and fearless. And it seems to me the way to discover who we are moment to moment, because he was always, if you look at his career, changing. He never wanted to do the same thing that he had done before, which is why you can never peg him in one area. We are always changing, but the way we discover how we change is how we express. And to have a vehicle of expression for ourselves. So the first question to ask yourselves is, do I have a vehicle where I get to express in some way that's safe, where I get to explore who I am? So for some people, that might be through artwork, through painting, or what do you call it, scrapbooking, sculpturing. You know, there's all sorts of music. I did it through journaling. I would say I had two ways, which was journaling and just talking to God. That was a way I was finding out how I felt about things. As much as I love treatment, my main way of communing with God is just talking. So I talk a lot, and it's really unlimited, so I can do it anytime, any place, anywhere. And but I mean, even since as a kid, it was just this constant conversation. And what happens is we find out what we think, right? When we're talking, when we're writing, when we're expressing, when we're painting, when we're expressing. So I think to be bold, daring, and fearless requires us to be expressed in some way. And that is something that we don't do just once in a while, but becomes an integral part of our everyday life. It's something that so ask yourself, what's that vehicle or vehicles, we don't need to limit ourselves, where I feel like I'm expressing who I am on a regular daily basis or almost daily basis. Because that's how you're going to be your bold, fearless, unique self, and discovering who that unique self is moment to moment. Now we have these introvert and extrovert. And I say that because for me, it's important to have a place where I express privately, because I need to feel safe and not get a lot of feedback. I need to be on my own. I think extroverts often express outwardly first, and then they go inward. So it might be a different path. So we're all different. So, but I liked what the reading said. No matter whether you're introvert or extrovert, you ultimately at some time spend time inward. Who am I? What do I feel? What do I think? I think of Reverend Nirvana, who was probably one of the most extroverted people I know. Big personality, talked big, was big, and yet there were definite periods of time where he was just so quiet. I don't know what he was working on something, and he just withdrew from the world, and he was working on himself. And I know that with my mother, who's a huge extrovert. I know Jack's an extrovert, but he has that quiet inner time. I don't think any one of us doesn't have that quiet inner time. So I think part of that expression is expressing while we're alone. However we do that, we find our own voice, because, here's why. Because the moment we start expressing externally, when there's other people around, we're going to get feedback to our expression. We're going to say, I like that, or I don't like that. And suddenly we can be swayed by what other people are thinking or feeling. Now, that's not always bad. It can grow us some more. So I gave the example a long time ago of one of the first steps is when I was in ministerial school, I had opinions about how the program was. And I always have thoughts, but I always kept them to myself. But I was just pushed by my friend you have to speak up. You have to say what you think. And I said what I thought, and I had all this disagreement come back at me. And I was like, wow, I was surprised. This is why I don't say anything out loud. Dopeheads. When I'm by myself, I'm right. Okay, let's just be clear. And I don't want anyone messing with that. But it was a great thing, because what I had to do, because I love other people and I'm not here just to be rude and in your face, but to learn, is by hearing their perspective, I say, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of that when I had my opinion. And if I had just kept my own personal opinion to myself, I would have never heard these other perspectives. So ultimately, I had to integrate what they were saying, what I was saying, to find my own truth. So because we don't live on islands. So when I say being our unique self, what's interesting about that is our unique self is inherently, the way we discover it is through one another as well. So it's not just by being by ourselves, but it's by expressing with other people and getting their, whether it's verbal feedback or emotional feedback or energy feedback, we get a sense of how things are going. And that starts to impact us more. And it doesn't make us, well, it can make us conforming, but if we're really doing our work, if we've really found our vehicle and we're continuing to go back to our vehicle every day on a regular basis, we're going to integrate it to find our own unique voice. If we do not have our vehicle, what will happen is other people's opinions will take precedent over our own opinion, because we won't know what we think. I said what I thought, people disagree with me, and I want to get along with other people, so I'm like, well, maybe they're right, or maybe I should do this. Now, we all do that. I'm not saying I'm so above caring what other people think or wanting people to agree with me. But I can't limit myself to that. I can't limit to myself to being like, yes, you're so right or you're so wrong. That's not going to bring me joy. It's not going to bring any one of us joy to have people just go, oh, I love who you are, because if I get really attached to what people, I really don't mean this for me, I mean all of us. If we get attached, I mean I as an individual, if we get attached to if people like it and we like that they like us, then we're going to say, okay, now what did I say again, and how can I keep doing this so people continue to like me and still show up and get that feedback? Or maybe some people like when people disagree with them, they purposely try to provoke. That's still using other people as your main source. And what I think why people are attracted to people who are bold, fearless, and daring is because they're willing to be who they are regardless of the reaction good as well as bad. They're not drawn into like, oh, you're so great. Because that's not what's exciting them. That's not what's filling them. What's filling them is their relationship with their self, with their own personal expression, and getting more and more comfortable with it. I had a moment this past, a couple weeks ago, before or after I wrote this, the title Audacious Living, and I'm not quite sure what it was. There was something that happened externally, and then this voice came and it thought me. I wouldn't say it was my mind thinking, it thought me, and it said, I don't care if people think I'm spiritual. And it was like this moment, like that just stopped me. And I wouldn't have had that thought if prior to that I did care. And I realized deep down, I wasn't aware of it till I had that thought, that if I'm a minister standing in front of people talking about God, that I have to be spiritual and that people have to perceive me as spiritual. And that was clearly something that was always on my mind, and I didn't even aware that that was on my mind, that I had to appear spiritual. And the moment where I said, I don't even care if people think I'm spiritual or not, was this incredible release of freedom and joy. Like, that was freedom. That was like, I'm just me. And I know what my, and it's not just me, because I think Prince is an example of, you can be completely you, but without that divine love intelligence in some form, there's something missing. But I'm so clear about my relationship with the divine. Like, I've just gotten like, I know it's enough. Like, I'm enough, just as I am. My relationship with the divine is enough. It doesn't mean I'm not learning. I'm always learning. But I'm learning in God, and that my relationship with this divine is deep, it's intimate, it's real, and of whether other people perceive it or not makes no difference to me, because I know it. And that's what this journey of audacious living is. This bold, daring, fearless, is that you are not only expressing who you are comfortable with who you are. You are saying, I'm enough. Because what I'm becoming more conscious of, and that's why I don't like it's not that I don't like the word, but am careful around the word audacious or great or genius or magnificent or powerful. Underneath that can be, you're not enough if you're not that. And I started becoming more aware on this spiritual path that we use a lot of words that feel like if I'm not this, then I'm not enough. And we can use spirituality in the same way that we use our human culture, that we use advertisements. You have to have this car, or you have to have this home, or you have to have this amount of money, or you have to have this, that, or the other thing to be enough. And the most audacious thing we can do is say, I am enough just as I am, that I don't have to change a single thing about me, that everything that I am, all my strengths, all my weaknesses, those places where I show up in a wonderful way, those ways where I show up maybe not so wonderful way, everything that makes me me is enough. That's the most audacious, daring, and fearless way to live. Be yourself. And be proud of it, and some people will like it and some people won't. And that doesn't mean we don't learn from that feedback, but we don't let that feedback own us. We don't let it suddenly start to turn, oh, they didn't like what I was doing, I'm going to change so I can make them happy. Because that's going to exhaust us, that's going to tire us out, and we're going to lose the joy of life. There's nothing more joyful and more fulfilling than saying, I'm just good the way I am, and I don't need to apologize for it. And I don't need to ask for forgiveness for it. And I don't need to make everybody else like me just the way I am. I accept that there are people who don't like me the way I am. And I can be okay with that. I'm all right with that. That is fearless, bold living, audacious living. That just as you are right in this moment, without doing another thing, without changing anything about your life, you are absolutely enough. Enough. Can you claim and accept that for yourself right now? And then as you have that and you combine that with your vehicle of expression or vehicles of expression, what a glorious way to live. What a powerful way to live. That you get to be enough just as you are, constantly learning. And that learning, just because you're learning new ways, doesn't mean that who you are now is not enough. It's just learning new ways, new expressions of your already enoughness, expressing from and as that already enoughness, expressing not to get validation, not to get fame, not to get power, not to get money, but to express out of the pure joy of your already enoughness. That is fulfilled living. That is audaciously joyous living that is possible to every one of us right here and right now. We do not need to be a master musician like Prince. We could say, well, he was the best he has his trajectory of life because he was such a brilliant musician. He was what Eric Clapton say, the best guitarist in the world or whatever. But what if he hadn't been? What if he was only a mediocre guitarist? Did he still have the right to be who he was, so different than the people around him? Was he still could he still audaciously and boldly and fearlessly say, I'm okay just the way I am, even though people aren't praising me and throwing money at me and giving me all this power? You are magnificent just as you are. You don't have to be a master guitar player, thank goodness. Some people are better than others. I cannot play guitar. Just as we are magnificent beings of light. Can you accept that about yourself? And when you don't, notice when you don't. So what happened was, in that moment when I said, I don't need to prove to anyone that I'm spiritual, that was just like this load off me. Like, I don't have to prove myself to anybody. But then, as I continued on the week, it kept coming back to me. I'm not feeling not enough again. Oh, I'm trying to prove myself again. And I started noticing, now I'm conscious of those moments where I don't feel like I'm enough, like I have to prove that I'm this. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. And that's the journey. That's our continual growth. It's one thing to have those moments, and then we want to sustain those moments where I feel like I'm enough. Know that I'm enough, just as I am, just as you are. So my invitation this week is, what is your vehicle of expression? Something that you can do. You don't need anyone else. You don't need an audience. You don't need a family member. It's just something you can do on your own, your self-expression, because we discover ourselves through expressing, whatever that is. What's your vehicle of expression? And give yourself to it as much as you possibly can every day. And work on, do I feel enough just as I am in this moment? Do I feel like I need to be doing something other than just being me? Do I feel like I need to prove myself? Do I feel like I need to get someone to like me? Do I feel like I need to do something to get more money at my job? Can I just accept myself the way I am? And who I am is constantly unfolding, and I get to learn that through how I'm expressing. It's this beautiful cycle. Audacious living. We're doing it right now. How many of you are already living audaciously? Everybody. We're all living audaciously. All right. Even Kim, who's holding prayer over there. Oh, I love this. Okay, so let's pray in our audacious way. Because there's nothing more magnificent than just to remember that there is only one power and one presence. There's not my power and your power. There's not our power and their power. It's not us and them. There's only one power, and it doesn't belong to any group of people, any life form. This one power and one presence is free, unlimited, unbounded, transcendent of all phenomenal existence. It is never limited, ever, by what is happening on this planet Earth. It has no past precedent. It is never limited by habit patterns. It is never limited by old ideas. It is never limited by genetics. It is not limited by anything that we may humanly think is powerful. It is free from all of that. There is one power, one presence. One power, one presence. And it is the absolute essence of everything on this planet. Right here and right now, it is who and what we are, not because we make it, not because we've done anything to deserve it. It simply is now. It is infinite oceanic love. It is love that we do not earn. It simply is who we are. It is beauty. It is wholeness. It is harmony. It is all of it, abundance and prosperity. And it is never, ever something that we can judge from a human relative idea. All our human ideas about this power and presence are so small compared to this presence itself, to the magnificent, infinite, oceanic presence. So let us just let go into it, into our interior self. Let us individually, in our own unique self, release ourselves to this oneness that is the source of who and what we are, that is the source of our unique self. It is not our thoughts, it is not our ideas, it is God's thoughts, it is God's ideas, it is God's soul, it is God's heart, it is God's body that has created itself as everyone in this room. It has created us. We haven't created it, it has created us. And so we don't need to make ourselves beautiful and special and magnificent. We are that inherently. So we just rest in it right now. We just let ourselves be. We are enough. Everyone in this room is enough, just as we are here and now. More than enough. We are the beautiful emanations of pure spirit. Regardless of what we're feeling, regardless of the conditions and circumstances of our life, externally or internally, we are enough. Because everything that is unfolding in God. There is nothing that is happening that is outside of this divine, infinite love, intelligence of pure love. Everything that we are is God. Everything that we are is perfect, whole, and complete. We are enough. We are enough. And how grateful I am for this beautiful enoughness, as each and every one of us has a wonderful, lovely, special way of expressing. It is here not to simply be, but to express. And every one of us is that wonderful dance that is individualized, that is personal. And it comes to us effortlessly. Our way of expressing, whether it's just praying, writing, painting, playing an instrument, singing to ourselves. We are each and every one of us this beautiful expression of God. We speak with God's voice. We act with God's heart. We are it now, right this very minute. Right now. Right now. Right now. And as we know this about our life, we know this about all those people with whom we love, who are here in this room because they are in our hearts. So right now, if you feel called, please call out the names of those who you love, who need prayer today. Activate this God consciousness of enoughness and beauty and wholeness. Please call out their names so they may feel this vibrational frequency. Please call out your own name. And now we hold those people who in our community who have made their transition. We give special awareness for Charlie, Kim's stepbrother, as he's made his transition to the other side of the veil, knowing that it is a place and a journey of love every step of the way. That he is surrounded and enfolded in love, and the loved ones on this side of the veil are also surrounded by this love and this tenderness. We know this for Sheila McCarthy as she's released her father to the other side of the veil, that he is carried in God's grace, peace, and love, and that her family is continued held in this ever-present healing love. For the goodness that God is all the time, where there is no opposite, there is only the good, showing up in many ways, but underneath it all, it is always good, and it is who we are now. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. In deep and abiding peace and joy, I let this word be now. And I invite us all to say together, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. Amen. And so